Oh, no, that was before.
Well, I've got, that's in 7.
Yeah, okay, so we're late.
This is where
Getting ready to go into something else.
yes,
Yes,
it's,
but what's that transition is what I'm looking to find out.
I don't know.
it was the first. This was the last of the offenses that they were committing, and what the judgment was going to be against them. They'd be trapped like in a snare, like a bird, or a gin. They call it a gin. It's a net.
Okay, so so up to this point, it was talking about falling and being broken and all that other
Right.
kind of stuff. Now in 16, it tells you what to do.
It tells them. They're telling Isaiah
Wait,
what he needs to do to preserve it.
yes, okay,
All right.
got it, okay.
Are we live yet?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
All right.
this is what you guys did perfect.
All right. So we're in chapter 8, verse 16. We're going to start with a new context here. This is God talking to Isaiah now. And he says to him in verse 16, it says, "Bind up the testimony, seal the law among my disciples." Now, to bind up, this expression is one that's applicable to a volume or roll of writing. The scrolls used to be rolled up, and then they would bind them with
Ribbon
or something to tie them together, right? Thus far, the prophet seems to have had the roll opened. You remember God told him to record this with a man's pen, right?
He's been writing this all down.
He's been writing it all down, right? Which is mentioned in Isaiah 8:1. Now the prophecy is complete, and he directs him to bind it up and close it. This prophecy needs to be preserved because most of this, right? The current stuff he's already talked about. This other part of this is the 2 captivities and the wars. Okay, I put in here note. Perhaps also it is implied that it would be useless any further to address the rebellious and headstrong people. He's been yelling at these people, and they're ignoring him, right? He had delivered his message, but they disregarded it. Okay. Now, the word testimony, this means the message, especially that of which Uriah and Zechariah had been called to bear witness. Remember the 2 that God selected? One was not in favor of religion, but and the other one was, right? Okay, so, and that was an 8:2. Any message?
Okay, well, he's just saying that.
Right. And these people were well known for their opinions, okay, and their honesty and dealings, okay. So,
Which is kind of why we have like Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
yes,
4 different accounts of the
same
same
thing,
story.
right. Okay, so if you look up Psalms 19:7, or Kings, or Deuteronomy, or whatever.
What do you want to take?
I don't care. Oh, you get Kings or
Yeah.
Psalms then?
Psalms is right
Old
next to
Testament.
Isaiah, by the way.
Right next to Isaiah. Okay.
Right in the middle.
I gotta look. And it's, remember, this is small print Bible.
It's in the middle of the Bible. Psalms is.
Just flip it to the center. You'll find it.
A copy of the covenant and proclaimed him king. They
Right.
anointed him, and the people clapped their hands and shouted, "Long live the king."
Right. Okay, that's the covenant. He brought out the covenant. That would have been a written account.
Jehoiada
good.
must have been the prophet in this one then,
Yes.
right? And he brought out the king's son, and he's the one that put the crown on.
written down, right? Making wise the simple,
Yeah.
right?
So giving them discernment.
Yes, yes, exactly,
Okay.
right? So that it's clear in their minds.
Mhm.
And the way Isaiah writes was very plain English, not fancy, not
Yeah.
above
Not the
anybody.
these and thous?
Yes, no, yeah, left all those out, right? Right, and then,
Deuteronomy 4:45.
right,
I got First Kings. if you
These
wanna
are
get
the
Nehemiah.
testimonies and the statutes and the ordinances which Moses spake unto the children of Israel when they came forth out of Egypt.
right. So again, that was a copy that was written down, correct?
Any message from God is what we're talking about
Yes.
right now.
Any message, right? Okay,
I got First Kings 2:3.
Dude.
and 6:20.
Oops.
You got all the dudes.
6.
Hey, I found 34.
All right.
Nehemiah 9:34.
She's gotta finish the dudes, and then I gotta do the kings.
6:17.
And then 20.
Ye shall diligently (20)
Mhm.
our God hath commanded you.
So they'll be to preserve is what they're saying, right?
Well, this is
The
all about
testimony.
the messages and the
Right,
testimonies
commandments.
and the commands.
Right.
So mine says, and observe what the Lord your God requires, walk in obedience to him and keep.
Our leaders, our priests, and our ancestors did not follow your law. They did not pay attention to your commands or the statutes you warned them to keep.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of saying it in plain English.
That's saying it plain English, okay.
Mhm.
So, in this, it says seal the law, and seal means, books and often were sealed when completed, as we seal a letter, they were,
Did they use wax back then with like a signet ring or something?
that was
to put
later
on?
on.
Okay, so
they-
they didn't use the wax then.
What, yeah, they used, actually, they used, beeswax,
Okay,
and they would take it and along the edge of
Yeah.
the paper, and then they would hold it
Stick.
and it would stick, but it wouldn't tear the paper when it come loose, right? Because keeping it bound, it would keep it closed so that air didn't get in there and deteriorate the ink they were using.
okay. It could get the outside, but it couldn't get the inside.
Correct.
That's why they always had the extra. I noticed
Yes.
whenever they
Yeah,
had
from the distance.
scrolls, they had a distance.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was for that purpose, because the air would only go so far inside there
Okay.
and stop movement. Right.
So preserve the.
Yeah,
all right.
preserve the writing, okay? All right, so the meaning here is to secure it or close up, perhaps by passing a cord or string around the volume, making it secure, denoting that it was finished. Daniel 8.
We'll grab this first.
Daniel 8.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a race to the finish.
Oh, no, I'm
no.
gonna lose.
Jeremiah.
Guarantee it.
Daniel
I know we just had that.
8. What's the
Daniel 8:26.
26?
Usually I'd pick them out. I'm
Right.
not picking them out
Daniel
today.
8:26.
The book of
12,
It's just before,
24,
right there.
26.
Yeah, I just found it.
And
Well,
the
all three of you got it at the same time, that's pretty cool.
8:20.
and the vision of the evening and the morning, which was told, is true.
You got 12 words.
Wherefore shut thou up the vision, for it shall be for many days.
Okay, so that's why he's closing
Mhm.
this up, so that it will be for the future, right? It's gonna be many days ahead. You okay there?
I do a sleep apnea.
Okay.
You want to
12,
trade?
4, all right, I got 12.
It's like all of a sudden you just.
Yeah. You just woke up again, huh? All right, it
Yeah, I
says,
did
and when
finish
he
this.
shall stand up, his kingdom shall be broken. I think this is 12:1. I'm gonna make sure I'm on the right one. Nope, that's 11. Let's go to 12. There we go. But thou, O Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book, even to the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. To the end times. So some of the things that were written by Daniel hasn't been released yet. Which had been given by inspiration, had now the force of law because it was commanded by, it was considered by God to be the law. So it was going to happen. It's not going to change. There's nothing man can do to stop it, right? From it proceeding exactly the way he's laid it out. All right. It says, among my disciples. Now, most of the Jewish commentators suppose that the volume, when completed by a prophet, was given for safekeeping to his disciples, or to some employed to preserve it securely. The word disciple means those who are taught, and here means those who were taught by the prophet. They weren't his disciples, but they were understudies, people that were, because he didn't have disciples then. Does that make sense? You had the firstborn that would go to the temple, and they were considered what? Scribes, right? Right.
Sounds to me like it could be a couple of things. It could
Okay.
be that he bound up the scrolls, but he bound them up separately and gave them to the disciples separately to preserve them, or related his experiences, his story of the prophet to them verbally, so that they would hold it and ponder it in their heart, in their head.
Right.
That's what the Bible says a lot.
Which would have been both ways,
Mm-hmm.
because he would not have turned it over until his death. This that would be chosen, right, by God, right? And we don't know who that is yet. Now, Isaiah doesn't know who it is. He might be one of his sons. Who knows, right? All right. So then, perhaps the pious and holy part of the people would listen to his instructions. He was trying to get it to the temple, right, so that they could hear these words. And that's why the disciples, like you said, he would have told them the whole story, right? And they would have gone and talked to the other people, right? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Because he's not leaving this area. The prophet, recognizing the failure of his work as regards the nation, right? He's tried, and we know he did that. Deposits this as a sealed document in the custody of his disciples. But this solemn act, he forms an inner circle of religious fellowship, which is the fellowship you're talking, remember? Which is the nucleus of the new people of God.
But it's something that
Because they didn't have, these disciples, even Isaiah didn't have access to the laws of Moses because they were kept in the temple. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So they can go and talk to these temple scribes and the people doing the recording, and they can tell them. Dead Sea Scrolls,
Yes.
Okay.
because that's the edge of the Dead Sea, that area, right? Would Isaiah thought that maybe that was a way to preserve them?
Mm-hmm.
And they think it's from this time period. kind of makes sense if you think about it, right? You don't want to go into the temple because the temple is going to get ransacked and destroyed because it have to be rebuilt.
Well, and God told him what to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
He said, you know, bind up the testimony, seal the law among my disciples.
Not in the temple, did he?
He
No.
told him specifically what to do. He didn't.
Mm-hmm. And they would seal it up. Now, those jars that they found,
We call that co-location.
co-location. There you go. Right. Those jars were sealed.
Mm-hmm.
The one, the kid that threw that rock into the cave and it heard the pottery break, he broke one of the seals. That's how they discovered it. But they've been in there for 1,000 years or longer. They figure they're about 2,000 years old or older. You know, they're not sure on the carbon dating them because they've been sealed. There's no air, or dirt, or anything to deteriorate them to give them a date. Kind of amazing if you think about it. All right. Anyway, so now I put there in here next the note. The next verse is now different. God is finished, and as Isaiah is speaking now.
Okay.
Okay. So 17 says, "And I will wait upon the Lord, that hideth his face from the house of Jacob, and I will look for him."
Oh, he turns his back.
Well, seeing that it regarded to the great mass of the nation, his exhortation had been in vain, all his work and time, right? He now says that having delivered his message, he would patiently look to God alone. Now he's going to go and he'll be collecting the remnants, is what he's going to be doing, okay? His hope was in him.
He's done telling people.
Right.
Now he's just going to go find the ones that listened.
Yep, and fellowship
Which is
with those.
looking upon God,
like he's
right?
Looking upon God and those that are going to be the remnants.
Just like in that song.
Yeah, okay. Job there's two for Job. You got Psalms again?
I'll grab it.
I got Job.
Hey, look at that. I opened up most of it.
Job 23.
9, yeah.
9. On the left hand, when he doth work, but I cannot behold him. He hideth himself on the right hand, that I cannot see him.
Mm-hmm.
You can't. He says. He's saying what?
He couldn't. He looked both left and right, and he couldn't find him.
Right.
He was nowhere to be found or seen.
Right. Okay.
So now 13, 24.
34 or 24. You're right. You're right. And you're in Psalms what?
I got them all.
Okay, you got them all. Okay, you got them all.
I'm there.
You're there.
Oh.
Wherefore hidest thou thy face?
Because he knows what's coming. They're going to be captive. Right.
Yep. So it's about God turning away,
Mm-hmm.
and
And they're not.
Why, Lord, do you stand far off? Why do you hide yourself in times of trouble? Because
'Cause
you
you-
made him mad. What do you
Disobeyed.
That too.
Right. And then Psalms 104. Yeah.
104, 29. Little numbers. They are terrible. Take away their breath, they die and return to the dust.
Mm-hmm. they're going the wrong direction. He's not going to get on it,
Right.
and then a big cruise ship goes by and they can't see him, right? And he says, "Why, God? Why did you do this?" He says, "I sent you help 3 times and you refused."
Mm-hmm.
That's an old saying that was
Yep.
when I was growing up.
Mhm.
I sent you three times.
Sent a log out in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Sent you a boat.
Yeah. Even though it was going the wrong direction. Oh. You're, and then the cruise ship. Yeah. Couldn't splash in the water. Right. So yeah, how much help did you really want? Right?
Right.
You rejected me 3 times.
Beggars can't be choosers.
That's
well, it's
right.
the whole 3 times too, right?
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So note that the house of Jacob always referenced the 12 tribes of Israel. By the way, and it says in here, he hides his face from the house of Jacob. So it's not going to affect just where Isaiah is in Jerusalem. It's going to affect all 12 tribes.
Mm-hmm.
Even Judah, which is the largest, is going to be taken. They're conspiring with each other right now, and Judah just paid faithful and observant of his commands and expect aid from him, right? I will believe that his promises are of final protection yet will yet be fulfilled, right? And Habakkuk.
Habakkuk. I have Habakkuk.
Okay, Habakkuk.
Habakkuk 3. For the vision, but at the end it shall speak and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come. It will not tarry.
Right. So it will come to pass exactly when he said it will. It will do exactly what he said it was going to do, and it will happen in exactly that order.
Right. He says, I will believe that his promise is a final protection
Brings the remnant back together.
for him. Yes. So he knows the prophecy.
Yeah.
Prophecy. He has delivered the prophecy. He has written down the prophecy, and he's believes the prophecy. And he even told them too. He said, "We're going to bring you a miracle. You know, Jesus is going to be born."
Yep. He talked
Told
about it.
him
Didn't he?
about that.
Told him.
Yeah. And they could, and that was for a later date.
Yeah, at an appointed time.
Right. Right. Okay, so let's do 18. 18 says, I and the children whom the Lord hath given me are for signs and for wonders in Israel from the Lord of hosts, which dwelleth in Mount Zion. Now, isn't that where Moses got the 10 Commandments? Mount
Yes,
Zion?
Mount Zion.
Right? So, behold, I and the children whom the Lord hath given me. This is in the significance of his own name. Isaiah
Remember those?
right? I'm not going into this tonight. Okay.
No, but I remember.
The remnant shall return, right? I put note, Isaiah had been directed to embody leading ideas of his teaching in the names of at least 2 of his children. Jahaz, Jahab is Emmanuel, and
Shalal Hashbaz.
speed, plunder, haste, spoil, right? The prophet finds a sufficient revelation of the future. Each was a nomen et omen for those who had ears to hear, or there's the ones that could see and hear.
Mm-hmm.
For those with eyes to see and
Let
It
them
was a
see.
message.
it was a
right?
message, yeah,
Mhm.
right. And so 19 says, and when they shall say unto you, seek unto them that have soothsayers and wizards,
and people who are looking at crystal balls, and
and yeah, and everybody but God, right?
when you should be getting help from me.
Mm-hmm. Right. The Israelites, to whom I and my children are signs and wonders, who are fallen from God. That's who they are, right? And his true religion and worship have fallen into superstition and idolatry. Will endeavor to seduce you into the that seek unto them familiar spirits and wizards that peep, right? They can see into the future is what they're saying, right? That mutter. You ever heard of chanting? Yeah, right? Should not people seek unto their God, for the living to the dead, right? These people are doing what?
They're trying to be necromancers or
Right.
contact the dead.
Dead, yeah. Well, we know that from the King David and Saul, and King Saul, because he contacted a witch, and wanted to talk to.
I
That's because they started absorbing all the other cultures into their beliefs, right? Wizards, men claiming supernatural knowledge that which is known, see in Leviticus and Deuteronomy. I think we already seen that before, right?
Leviticus 19:31.
Yeah,
Leviticus.
yeah,
got
and
You
then,
got it?
yeah, Deuteronomy.
Out of
Oh,
Deuteronomy.
she got. In 2027, huh?
Spiritists.
2027.
She's, oh, you
No,
want to do that one
That's
too?
you.
Oh, 2027, turn the page.
You turned 2 pages.
I did.
Yeah.
I remember watching a movie
Yeah.
about them having a drawing and stoning.
Somebody did that.
Well, they were in school.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yes.
I don't know what it was called or anything. Weird idea what was going on until the end, and it's like, wow,
Mm-hmm.
you know, we
Yep.
should still show that
Mm-hmm. Straighten a lot of kids out of school, huh?
real quick.
It was in school,
Yeah.
Yeah, I watched it in school.
and they did stonings and stuff.
No, we weren't doing the. It was a movie,
Right.
and it was about they had a lottery. It was four, I don't remember.
Okay, keep going.
But they ended up, so whoever got, they were drawing stones or so, whoever got the black stone, I think it was a black stone, that's who they stoned. And they literally just, the rest of the crowd took all the stones they drew out of the bag and started throwing them at that one person.
It's kind
And
of like
stoned
that.
them to death.
Yeah.
What's that movie that just? What it's called right now? Okay.
Right.
So
Deuteronomy.
Deuteronomy
18:11.
18:11.
Yeah.
Or a charmer, or a consulter with a familiar spirit, or a wizard, or a necromancer.
Yep.
This is necromancy, yeah.
Someone that talks to the dead. Yeah.
That's my science fiction speaking out.
Well, he says stone them,
Yeah.
and the blood will be upon their head, which means you're not guilty. Send them to me. I have to talk to them. Right? I'm like, okay. All right. So the peeping that mutter, that speak with a pulling and a low voice, as these two words signify, which they affected to do in speaking rather inwardly in their bellies than outwardly, and audible with their mouths and voices, as a title of like a ventriloquist, commonly given to them, signifies. Originally, a ventriloquist was somebody that did this. That's where that came from.
Because they could throw their voice.
They could throw their
Yeah.
voice, right? says there, for the living to the dead, shall they seek the living men, should inquire of the living God, is it proper and reasonable? It is highly absurd for them to forsake him and to seek dead idols, either to the images or to the spirits of dead men, which are supposed to dwell and speak in them. The only, it was explained to me that anytime that you get somebody that says that they're in contact with the dead, all they're in contact with is with an evil spirit. They're using, the medium will tell him whatever he wants to hear, or thinks he should know, so he can mislead people. And that's where you come down, right?
So the
Times and
Okay, now, do you think that an angel couldn't help someone? It might be an answer to one of God's prayers, or prayer to God for a family.
he has no messages for them.
He has no message for them, right?
He just has a visual.
Right, right. Does that make sense?
So these are the ones that are deceitful
Yes.
and trying to purposely either.
Manipulate or
down
lead
the
you in a
primrose
direction.
path, yeah.
Okay.
Manipulate.
Right, yeah, it's total manipulation.
Okay.
All right, so 20, we start with verse 20, it says, to the law and to the testimony, which he already closed up and rolled up, right? If they speak not according to this word, it is because there is no light in them.
Okay, so
Okay.
that's the
In other
difference
words,
right
they
there.
lost their
They have no
No spirit.
grace or spirit
Period.
from God,
Yeah.
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 no salvation. There's no light. They're
Gone, no
dark.
light, all right? To the law and the testimony, let this dispute between you and them be determined by God's word, is what he's saying, right? Which is here and in many places called the law to signify their obligation to believe and obey it. And the testimony because it is a witness between God and man, and God's will and of man's duty, right? So when they said to the law and to the testimony, if you were to bring that phrase up in a conversation, it would be almost like a legal document.
For example, Joseph had a dream,
Mm-hmm. It's a vision, yeah.
and so whenever he told the king
Mhm.
about his dream, somebody consider that to be some the future.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Okay, I just
Right.
want to get
Well,
that in my head.
Well, remember Joseph when he was in the prison? He-
As I'm talking about
the dreams?
the baker and the
That's a Joseph, yeah. But what did he say? Every time
he
before,
said God
yes,
gave me
gave me this. He identified who it came from. All right,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that it's witness between God and man, of God's will, and then man's duty to follow these. All right. They speak not according to his word. It means you're in a it's not of God,
Right.
right?
Yep.
And that's Isaiah 8:19, that's what we were covering a while ago, right?
Mhm.
And when they shall say unto you, seek unto the, familiar. Let from the darkness of their minds. These people are not
not your friend.
your friend. They're evil of thought, right? They're just trying to make money off of you. the future. They can't see anything. But these words are by divers learned interpreters understood not as a declaration of their ignorance, but a combination and prediction of their misery. Right? Light being mostly commonly used in Scripture for comfort and happiness, and darkness for sorrows and calamities. Right? He brings life to the world, right? Salvation. And Satan brought what? Darkness and confusion and chaos, right? Sorrows and calamities, right? Yeah. Okay. So 21 says, and they shall pass through it, hardly bestead and hungry, and it shall come to pass that when they shall be hungry, they shall fret themselves and curse their king and their God and look upward.
Be a little late then to look upward, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but they're cursing.
Yeah.
They're cursing.
Oh,
They're
okay,
cursing
that's,
God.
They're
okay.
shaking their fist at him.
Yeah. So
They're
when
not-
and they shall pass. The people who have been consulting these necromancers and the spirits, right? This represents the condition of those who have sought for counsel and direction and who have not found it. They're not going to be satisfied with the answers, right?
Right. They have no peace.
They're going to not have peace. They shall be conscious of disappointment and shall wander. They're lost. Kind of reminds you of the end times when it be gnashing of teeth.
Yep.
Yeah, weeping.
Gnashing of teeth.
Uh-huh.
They have nowhere to go.
Right.
Have no focus, nothing. They're empty shells, right? Through the land, they shall wander in from one place to another, seeking direction and relief. They are oppressed, borne down, agitated. The meaning is that the people would wander about, oppressed by the calamities that are coming upon the nation, and alleviated by all the soothsayers and necromancers could do.
Yeah. So
They're-
like
They're not getting the answers.
for now, if I had a house, I'd be happy. And then they get the bigger house. So if I could live in another state, I'd be happy. And then or if I had this job, I'd be happy. And if I had this job, I'd be happy. And they're never happy because they're looking for the wrong things. They're not looking for God.
Right.
And God can make you happy in whatever situation you're in.
Yeah. Some of the happiest people I've ever met lived on the streets.
Yep. But they were full of the Holy Spirit.
Right. They didn't need anything. Right.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, you run into those a lot of times when you're overseas. People that truly have the Spirit in them, they live on the street. They give up. They're like John the Baptist. They give up their worldly goods, and they're the happiest people that will help you do anything, and won't ask for a dime. We would run into
That's
some of
full
those.
trust and belief.
Yeah, and when you run into those people in different cities and different cultures, and man, you can tell.
Because they
They-
live on pure faith.
They're going on pure faith, and that's just an amazing thing to witness, and you want to be with them, have the greatest times. It's just like, oh, God, these guys are great, and you try to pay them, and they refuse it because you're taking their blessing away. No, ain't doing that. Don't insult me. I have a couple of them tell me that. Don't insult me. You're not taking my blessing. Right? So I'm like, okay. All right, so, and hungry, they're famished. As one effect of the great calamities that would afflict the nation, the hunger is also for truth and reason of the calamities.
Yeah.
So they're going to be right, they're weeds, right? So there's going to be a regular famished, right? But the truth, also for the truth and reason for the calamities,
Second.
Where all those bones come from?
I think God took them out.
He took them. Earth.
Except for the gold flakes.
Left it there as witness.
That was.
It would make them think about you'd think there would be some bones out there.
Somewhere.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there's proof that they actually were there.
Yes, because
Just
of
no
pottery
bones.
and stuff.
Just
But no bones. No skulls, no femurs,
no
no
teeth.
no teeth.
Teeth are the ones that don't usually.
Approaches for having trusted to false gods. Uh-oh, wake up
So
call.
you mean they finally start actually having some dawning?
When this period of time when this happens,
Ooh,
where are
I
they
know
usually
how.
at? They're usually in captivity. In which they had trusted, but they also seem to imply that they would rather curse the true God, the King, and the God of the Jewish people. Curse God, because salvation for them all. All right, and it says, "And look upward for relief." This notes the condition of those in deep distress, instinctively casting their eyes to heaven for aid, right feelings, and that they would see there only the tokens of their Creator's displeasure.
Mm-hmm.
The sun is going to beat down on you. It's not going to rain.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to have shade. I mean, he turns it into a wasteland. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so verse 22 says, it's almost,
It's the last one.
yeah, last verse, right? And they shall look unto the earth, and behold, trouble and darkness, dimness of anguish, right? And they shall be driven into darkness. Wow, sounds like the end times, huh?
Mm-hmm.
And it says, and they shall look unto the earth. A person in distress upwards and downwards, backwards and forwards, on the right hand and on the left, particularly into the land of Judea, a land that used to flow with milk and honey, a land of light, plenty, and prosperity is gone.
Mm-hmm.
And behold, trouble and darkness. they're going to find adversity and miseries of all kinds expressed by a variety of words. Even words fail to express the tribulation of these times, from which were such as not from the beginning of the world in Matthew 24:22.
I got it.
You got it? Okay.
Thank you.
And except those days had been shortened, no flesh would have been saved. But for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened.
Yeah, to 3.5 years instead of 7.
That was the 7 years. Oh yes, I understand.
Yes, right?
And it got shortened to
3.5. Correct.
because they said that nobody would.
But
Yeah.
'16, just before that.
Then let them that are in Judea flee unto the mountains.
Get out of.
Let them go.
Let them go. Right. Because what happens? Can you run away from God's punishment?
No.
He
Yeah.
will find you.
We
Hey, they
know.
tried. They went to the mountains and everything to hide, right?
And he
Even
shook,
into
and then he shook
caves
the
and-
mountains.
Yep.
Didn't he?
You can't run away from God. Period.
Period. Right.
You'll end up in the belly of a fish for 3 days.
Right? Or somewhere there, right? So the only last thing it says, and they shall be driven into darkness. When in calamity, they shall be driven and fall into another. The whole land shall be full of nothing else.
What calamities.
Just
Yeah.
Slapstick.
Slapstick, just no matter
What
what.
they do, they're hitting a pan or a pot or knocking glass over. Or
Right? It's just,
This thing's falling on them.
it's pretty amazing if you think about it, right? It's like, it's just one thing after another.
Yeah, that's what reminds me of like slapstick comedy, right?
Yes, it
Lauren
does, right?
Hardy.
Lauren Hardy, or the Three
Laurel and
Stooges.
Hardy.
Yeah, the Three Stooges.
Or no, Billy, yeah.
do you want to respond to this? Or do you want me to throw it away?
We don't need.
No, it's a different person.
Well, should we pray out real
Yeah.
quick? Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for the daily, Lord. We thank you for the Bible study. Lord, we ask
Amen.
Amen.
Izzy.
No.
Izzy. Izzy.
what echoes in the book.